We're live on audio. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adbukta.
This is Merps. Hello, hello. I see you still have that monstrosity on your chin. Another week of disappointment for me. To expect better from you. I don't. Oh, yikes, man. That's hideous.
I think the more my hair grows out, the less bad that this stuff on my chin looks. I don't think it'll ever look good, but I think the difference between a -6 and a -4 should be appreciated.
I like how you immediately went to the negatives.
Oh,
Like,
we're
not working with any low positive numbers anymore. It's
what do you mean
negative.
anymore? Call a spade a spade. I don't think this looks good. That's not why I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it out of morbid curiosity, and because I am retired before I can do this again. I cannot show up to work like this.
Is this some sort of race to the bottom experimentation where you see just how much of a degenerate you could be until Brand New thinks about leaving you?
Oh no, then I would have kept the whole beard. I shaved off the really nasty parts of my beard. I just kept this little thing. But yeah,
in some ways I think it's worse. But okay, sure.
Yeah. So this is one more week that has gone by without arena news. But if we never talk about arena unless Blizzard does something, I think we will just never talk about arena for the rest of the year. So let's not do that, and we'll talk a little about Priest later on. First, we'll talk about some Battlegrounds news. But I did play a bunch of arena this week, and I also did play a lot of Battlegrounds this week. So I mean, I did a rare thing and played like 6 hours off stream of Battlegrounds this weekend because I just needed some stress relief.
You queued into dreads and you killed him.
Oh, did I? I didn't even realize. Yeah, I had no idea. Like I told you, I don't scout and I don't look at people, so I didn't know that I faced dreads.
I'm well aware of
but
this.
I'm glad I came off well there. I did get 2 8s in a row to close things out. But
so the only time that you can actually gain MMR is when you're facing not dreads, which, understanding your skill and experiences in BGs and dreads, this makes a lot of sense. This actually proves that BG works. Okay.
So I also played on stream a couple of arena runs, and I got a 12 win in Priest, which you guys will see on YouTube next week sometime. It's a pretty insane run, one of those where I start off by saying we're going to get 5 or 6 wins, and we go 12. So check out, keep an eye out for that for our YouTubes. Anyway, let's talk about Battlegrounds. Something there was something happening in the Battlegrounds. So I've been, if you guys haven't realized from listening to this or watching the streams for the last month, probably 2 months now, I've been pretty checked out. Of everything that has that doesn't have anything to do with buying the house and moving into the house, just pretty checked out. So I don't really know what's going on with this, but apparently there has been this big tournament in Battlegrounds that generated a lot of excitement, and apparently we know some of the high performers.
Yes, we do. Okay, so once again, during this past week we had the second Battlegrounds Brawl. This is the first one was way back in fall/winter of last year. This is an invitational, and spoiler alert, because now, if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, maybe you come back to this podcast a little bit later. But we had 4 teams of 4 duking it out in 7 BG games. And at the end of the day, the winning team was the Fogsail Freebooters with Dog, Hafu, Taish, and Stan Udachi. Congrats to them. And the highest individual score ended up being Slissa, who just had on. I know. I want to say that being on the Lightforge was the sole factor in her rocketing up the top and being so successful. You're welcome, Slissa. I will send the invoice very soon. But congrats
that's
to her.
What happens. That's what happens when you get on the Lightforge for Battlegrounds. You either perform number 1 out of all these great players that are playing, or you don't get invited. Actually, you don't get invited anyway right off the bat. I think Slissa was a late addition, right?
Slissa was a late addition, so Amaz was supposed to be on, and Slissa actually got a call the night before, and she was like heading to bed, and she got the call, and they asked her if she wanted to compete. Obviously, the answer is yes. When it's a $200,000 invitational, and
And it's Slissa. She's been working on it. She wants to do this. This
she's
is a
been
great,
working on it
yeah.
exactly. So, first of all, I watched the entire brawl. It was supremely entertaining. It was really fun. So about 2 weeks ago, I did have some criticisms on their selection process for this, but is an event like this fun for people who are fans of Battlegrounds? Is it entertaining? Yes, and yes. It is ridiculously entertaining, and I hope that they have more of this. Uh, you don't even have to attach a $200,000 prize
Yeah.
pool to it. I think people are just interested in this in general, and
And
I
the
think
pros and the people who do this,
yeah,
they're going to take it really seriously. Whether, and I'm not like, okay, you know what? I don't want to go down this road because I don't want it to come out. It's like, oh, the Grinning Goat advertises not paying the players. No, it's great that you pay the players. And 200 split among what, like, how
yeah,
many people is this? It's not like that much money.
16.
Yeah, like,
So you the losers, quote unquote, go home with a cool $7,500, and the winners, Dog, Hafu, Taish, and Stanu Dachi, each get $20,000. That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice.
yeah. This is also it's just the arena representation is strong in that team. That's Stan Udachi was in the arena tournament, did really well. Hafu, old school arena player.
Because you didn't watch this tournament,
No.
right? Okay. At the end, when they did the winners interview and they got to Stan Udachi, do you know what he talked about? He talked about arena.
What?
He asked Blizzard, because okay, so if you guys don't know Stan Udachi, he is just some sort of inhuman entity. Like because he has so many constructed wins,
Mm-hmm.
so many arena wins.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem possible for one person to generate this much individually.
I remember
It's
this because
scary.
I didn't know who he was, and then he was in an arena tournament. I just assumed he was a constructive player, and then people started messaging me, and I was like, "Oh no, he plays like arena, like quite significantly." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, just not like because he's a pro player and he plays constructive because that's where the tournaments are. But he
Yep.
loves arena. He plays it all the time. He's really good." I'm like, "Oh, just had no idea."
He said that he likes arena, and arena is actually his favorite.
Mm.
And he asked Blizzard to just basically be like, well, we could use more love.
Hmm.
We could use more attention here. He used his BG winning interview to make a plea for arena. That
Wow,
is a true
props.
bro and a true friend of the arena. So thank you, Stan. Keep
Definitely, thank
being.
you. What did Blizzard respond? It just like arena.
Well, I mean, this isn't like Blizzard obviously wasn't there to
Oh, right.
respond, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
Frodan and
Mm-hmm.
Sottle who were casting it. So no, it's not
Right,
like
right,
he's
right.
face to face with Ixar or or anything like that. So that is pretty cool. But I will say that once again, highly entertaining. Congrats to everyone involved as well, because as we know, um, even if someone has a bad day, within 7 games, it doesn't really mean anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
We obviously want to congratulate the winning team. We want to congratulate Slissa, but we want to also congratulate everyone on putting on a really, really good show.
Yeah. So having been just totally out of the loop, you mentioned before that there were some interesting strategies that were shown. And when I say out of the loop, I mean I'm like super out of the loop. Like unless Merps tells me something about Battlegrounds, I don't even know it. Like if it's not on the front page of the Hearthstone or Arena HS or Bob's Tavern subreddit, and like it's on someone's stream or it's on Twitter or it's like I don't know a news item or something, I'm blacked out basically. So I get my strats straight from Merps, my personal experience, and stuff I see on Reddit. But it seems like some interesting strats, or at least some particular strats did better than others, happened in the Battleground Brawl.
So this is really interesting because as soon as this format came out, and by format, I'll let you guys know. Once again, we have the money structure that I laid out. Every individual of the first team gets $20,000, and then it's 12.5, 10, and then 7.5. The point structure is very interesting. So the point structure is there are 8 players in the lobby. So it's you and a teammate. So you're paired up, and then you're facing 3 other pairs within a lobby. And the point structure within each lobby goes as follows: 5th through 8th place get no points, which means 5th is the same as 8th.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're first out or if you just missed the cusp. Same difference, right?
And did Blizzard organize this tournament? Blizzard organized this tournament, right? It's not just
Blizzard
Twitch.
organized this tournament. Yep.
Okay.
No, this isn't some Twitch thing. This is a
a fully sponsored Blizz thing.
Yeah. Okay. This is a fully sponsored.
That's interesting.
Blizzard
because we talk about MMR, right? Like, and we're looking at it at the current MMR system. We talk about how it can be fixed or whatever. One way that they could change the MMR system is to literally do something like that and not reward, like make it like a sit and go, like poker tournament for people who play like, online poker, where you don't get anything unless you finish top 3. And that incentivizes a whole different kind of play style. I would say the game is worse for that, but
I would say it too.
That's how the tournament was set up. Sort of. Like,
yes.
They paid out top 4, but
so what this to finish up the point breakdown, 4th place gets 1 point, 3rd place gets 2 points, and then 2nd place gets 4 points, 1st place gets 5 points. I don't know why there's that.
That's weird.
I know, right? So it's 5-4. 2-1, which is weird. So like what it means is you better be aiming for top 2. You aiming for 4th is negative EV, significantly so.
Right.
And getting 1st is further incentivized because they say at the end of the tournament, at the end of the competition, if there is a tie, most 1st places wins. It breaks the tie.
That makes sense.
So that's yeah. So what this means, and like when you think about this, what this means, and I'm very glad that Slissa was the top performer because she exemplified this philosophy. It changes your thinking of the heroes by a lot. So if you just think about the tournament, number 1, it obviously makes Rafam super duper S tier. Like, no one really comes close to him, in my opinion, just because you have someone who is not only scouting for you, like you have your pick from their lineup. Like, whatever you want, you just tell your teammate, they just give it to you. That's extraordinarily powerful. But I think Slissa, out of her 7 games, in 2 of her games, she picked Reno. A hero in which we see as pretty bad.
What?
Even after
Reno's mid-tier.
No, but like pretty bad, like not definitely not good.
I like Reno,
but she picked Reno over some, definitely some like by the HS replay list better heroes, and it just goes to playing towards your point structure. Because think of it this way: in the MMR system, if you have someone who goes 1st, 8th, 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 and another person who goes 4th, 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 the person who goes 4th, 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 4th wins out, significantly so, in terms of plus minus MMR. In this tournament structure, though, the person who goes 4th 4 times in a row gets 4 points. The person who goes 1st, 8th, 8, 8, 8, gets 5 points and a tiebreak kicker. So what it really does is incentivize you to pick the Renos, pick the Flurgles, pick the heroes that can really, really high roll.
More than
Be-
that, like more than just a point system. The fact that you have a teammate, and so every few matches you just get a free turn basically, or you can
Mhm.
like arrange it with them, like what to do. You
Yeah,
can both level, right? Like you just have that pact. That makes a lot of the heroes better that are more like late game oriented than the ones
yeah.
with the early survival powers.
Yeah, definitely. And it creates this system, right? Also, where if you take out any sort of MMR mitigation from fifth to eighth, it makes heroes like, for example, Daryl a lot worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Daryl is a hero in which we look at within the MMR system and say he's one of the best heroes,
Yep.
definitely. But here, where there is no mitigation from going fifth instead of seventh, and also that highly rewards being top two and really just
Mm-hmm.
number
Top
one.
one.
Yeah, it makes a hero like Daryl not like unpickably bad, but pretty bad. Because if you just look at it on average, uh, some heroes don't change at all. A hero like Eudora or Hooktusk, they're still good. Not only do they have that consistency, but they can high roll. And I would say Eudora is really good for this tournament just because of her ability to completely high roll and just like
Mm-hmm.
just demolish everything in the lobby if she gets anything good at all from her digs. So I thought it was really interesting just because when you look at these strategies, like you said, it gives us an idea of, okay, well, how can they shift this? And if you are thinking about heroes in general, right? If you're looking at heroes and if you want to break this down, like we always break it down with the arena and say, okay, why is a card good or bad, right? Because if you want to take the next step and just be like, okay, well, this card is good, this card is bad. I know this from other people's experiences. If you want to get better and if you want to think about in BGs what makes a hero good, it all goes down to how does it play within the current MMR system. And in order for you to do that, you need to think beyond just like, okay, well, this is what HS Replay tells me. And then you have to think about what is the structure? What are the rules I'm playing with? Sometimes it's actual tournament rules, other times it's the MMR system and the rules associated with that, and then plug it in, and then you'll get a better understanding of okay, so this is why the hero is good, and by doing that, you'll just be better at BGs in general. So I thought that this tournament not only was a fun and cool experience for everyone, but if you want to break it down and see these detailed strategies and like look at the difference between the people that implemented the strategy versus the people who didn't, um, it's a good way for you to recognize, okay, this is actually a great exercise in improving my understanding
Mm-hmm.
of the game,
Yep.
period. Because uh, adapt like adaptation and understanding of the game all comes from you, not just sort of following and parroting, right? But you being able to sort of visualize and apply these new rules. So it's just fun. It's just cool. And you should definitely do that more often when new heroes come out, they make any changes. Critical thinking, guys. It's very important.
So, in this new, more incentivizing high rolling meta, was it better or was it worse than either the current meta or the previous meta that seemed pretty good before Pirates?
I would say that based on the tournament, um, one of the things that I don't exactly think you can take away from it is the fact that everyone plays under the same rules,
Mm-hmm.
which, as you know, is not the case in the current MMR
Right, right,
system.
right.
And I think that is what kept people in check. Also, you just don't see a lot of completely oddball plays, right? It's like if you have an arena tournament in which everyone is highly skilled, like people I, I think people expect to see is like, oh, it's all good players, so you're going to see lots of crazy stuff. You're actually going to see a little bit of limitation in terms of the actual super crazy stuff, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, I know Hobgoblin is like not in the meta, but like if it were, you won't see those sort of like weird tactics, right? So I think in a way, just because you're inviting people who are obviously extraordinarily skilled, uh, you have some consistency there, and you don't have the like 8K player facing 11, 12, 13K players and just purely shooting for the moon because they can afford to, because they're literally playing a game with different rules, but they're playing in the same game as people who are
Right.
13K, right? So I, it's hard for me to say, but I think generally, do I appreciate the fact that everyone in the room is playing with the exact same incentives and rules? Yes, and that is what's missing right now in BGs.
Okay. All right. Well, so that's the battleground brawl. Hopefully, we'll see more of these tournaments happen in the future, especially after Battlegrounds exits beta, whenever that is. Which I don't know. Doesn't seem like it's actually going to happen that soon. Maybe next BlizzCon, right? But yeah, these tournaments are like I told you guys. I've been checked out. I'm checking back in. I think after 4th of July, I'll be like back to my normal self and the amount of attention I pay to this game. But what I have done before we fully wrap up this Battlegrounds thing. In the actual game of Battlegrounds, in the current meta, right? I played 6 hours. My MMR didn't move, but I did a lot of dumb things. But there were 2 times that I got 8th back to back. Apparently, I beat Dreads before that. I don't know, but there were 2 times that this is like it really amazes me that I faced Dreads without knowing, because I thought I looked at everyone's names, but apparently I don't.
Nope. This just proves it. This obviously proves it.
And Dreads is Dreads. He doesn't use like
No,
like an
no,
alt
no. He
account. His
doesn't
name is just
use.
Dreads, so I would have noticed. But okay, so I got 8th place twice in a row, and it really knocked off my MMR, which until that point had been like slowly climbing. Now, how that happened is that both times at around turn 10, I took a hit for more than 20 points to go from over 20 HP to dead. And I knew I was probably going to take a hit, or because the turn before I actually won for both of them. The turn before I beat my previous matchup, but then I did a setup move and I got the setup. Like I would have had like a Goldrin and like a Baron, and then I would have like frozen for like a triple or something, right? Like it's just gonna take me one more turn to fully set up a really nice comp, and I would have been like way better than anybody else, right? Like remember, there are still 7 people left in this game.
Yeah.
And instead, I get hit for over 20 points. Some due to RNG, some just, I think, no, you know what? I think both times it wasn't even RNG too much. It was like I looked at it and I was like, oh, they're going to hit me for a lot. And that happens quite significantly. Just to randomly roll into that twice in a row is nearly impossible unless it happens quite frequently. So
If you're facing Eudora on 7 gold, for example, yeah, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing. So when a lot of the game comes down to, and by comes down to, I mean, are you able to play this game, right?
yeah.
When a lot of it comes down to, you're like, oh shit, I didn't face Eudora at the beginning of the game. Am I going to face Eudora on 7 gold? And you face Eudora on 7 gold. Okay, I mean, you probably take like 15 damage on 7 gold. That sucks. That sucks big time.
But that's not even as bad as facing Eudora, like a Eudora who has successfully high rolled and then built off of that on like turn 9 or something. Because that's when they hit you for 20 plus points. Like I felt so safe with 23 health, and then I got dealt like that exact lethal. Like as I was setting up. That's why you do a setup move, right? You have all that health, you gotta use it to do a setup move, because this is a high rolling meta. You can't just like sit down in tier 4 and like successfully wait out too many people. And I had like the opportunity, so you go for it, but you shouldn't be able to be slapped down that hard. Like that's really hard. Like that's why I was telling you this before. I think there should be a cap on the amount of damage you can take. And I
think people would welcome that.
Yeah, and you mentioned like a progressive cap, so like something like double the turn number or double the amount of mana you have available, like as being the cap for the amount of damage you can take in a turn, just to get rid of the super outliers. and that'll both keep the super outliers of high rolling characters in check, and also just RNG stuff, right? Like if someone ends up with a Sneeds or a Gas Coiler early, that they don't end up dealing like a bajillion damage to you.
Yeah. So I think that might be a good idea. Obviously, this is not fully formed, but I think some sort of cap to just weed out the very extreme examples would be good, right? So, for example, on 8 gold, you can't have more than 16 damage dealt to you. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of fair.
Yeah.
On 9 gold, you can't have more than 18 damage dealt to you, which sometimes can happen now.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can definitely happen.
It happens pretty
So
easily. I feel like it happens like
yeah.
half the time I face one of the power heroes
Mhm.
in 9 gold, and I don't have a ridiculous setup.
Yeah. So, and then afterwards, I'm fine with it. Keep with a with the damage continuing to escalate. So on 10 gold, the first turn on 10 gold, 20 damage, and then it's just 22 damage. So it just keeps on going up by two.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think something like that is necessary right now. And I'm not saying this actually solves the problem,
No.
but something has to be done right now because I'll tell you this: since the latest patch, which was last Friday, however you want to like define last.
Yeah.
I've only played during my Tuesday stream. I have not played any other time before or after that. This is the first time in months that I have not played any BGs outside of streams, and it's just because I don't find it fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I've decreased my streams of BGs that I watch as well. I think a perfect example comes from many incidents on Tuesday where I'll lay out what happens. I'll face a person, they smack me for like 15, 16 damage in the like early mid game. I don't really improve. I face someone else and I'm 90% favored to win. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
not improved that. I just spent it leveling, and maybe I did, like literally did not improve at all.
Right.
Like I level, and then I'll just buy like the 3 gold
Mm-hmm.
pirate,
Yep.
right, in order to econ. And then I'm 90% favored to beat someone. So what does this mean? It just means like the power level in the lobby varies so much,
Yep.
and we expect some variability, right? But you should be able to have a better grasp or a better idea of like, okay, how strong am I right now? And if I'm just facing the field, like I can face a guy with strength X plus or minus 2, right? In terms of, let's say, tempo or whatever. But right now it's like X plus or minus 20, and
Mm-hmm.
it's insane. And I don't find it enjoyable currently. And that's why I really haven't been playing. You've been playing a lot more than I have.
Yeah, I wanted to figure out some more like pirate stuff, just so like maybe I know what all the pirates do. And I realized that we were right. Like the pirates are crap. They stay crappy. I'm getting smarter about when to use the cannon and when not to, and when to get off the cannon if I have a cannon. And I've realized that double cannons are really pretty bad. I keep seeing them, and so I'm like, oh, it can't be that bad. But they actually don't work very well. So like, because you get two cannons, right? They're supposed to be really good cards. Then you can wait for a triple. Like that seems like a decent strat, but just it's so awkward.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I'm just trying to learn. Learn how to use the bird a bit more than I was able to before, and how to avoid getting other death rattles caught in the middle, and how to transition that.
I don't
Just
think there's much to learn about the bird.
well, because I like rats. So if I'm doing like a beast build, I probably had a rat at some point, and so at some point I have to sell the rat, and I have to know when to sell the rat. It just sucks when the rat can't be in my final comp. Like I'm not
I
comfortable with that.
I yeah, I was gonna say I understand your pain, but I really don't understand your pain. So sure,
It's one
that's
rat,
fine.
and then it generates all the other rats, man. All of them. Like how boat people really like, but like that's got to be golden, and it'll still only generate 6. Whereas a rat just needs to be 7/7, and it'll give you 7.
Okay, so for you, it's yep rat instead. Gotcha. All right. Okay, great. But yes, so that's BG's right now. I would say that I'm really not having a great time in the meta currently. Do I think that Blizzard will change things up eventually? Yeah, of course I do. They just spent two hundred
Hurry
thousand
up.
dollars on it.
Hurry up. It is
But
not
please
that
hurry.
hard to nerf a hero or take him out of rotation for a tiny bit of time until you fix them. You can do it.
Eudora and Hook Tusk are not
Oh
good
my
for the
god.
game. Parrot is not good for the game. Pirates are design wise in a really bad spot because
Yeah.
they're too powerful in the mid game and too weak in the late game.
hmm
That's a real problem.
I feel
Like
like the
we need
late game can be fixed pretty easily, but the too powerful in the mid game, like changing
that's
that
hard.
messes a lot of their whole thing up.
That's really hard actually because
Yeah.
right now they um nothing hits as hard as pirates in the mid game. But then like if you weaken their mid game, how do they get to the late game? Or
Right.
like so it's messy. It's really messy because pirates also have no tech, right?
Yeah.
They have stats and then they hit you.
hmm
Um, so yeah, it's really hard because other tribes have like weird tech decisions that they can do to help them. Pirates don't have any of that as of right now.
Yep. Mm. Oh, by the way, I tried some since last week when we were talking about it. I tried some big demon strats. They're really good.
They're good right now. They're
Like they're
good.
really good. I'm always surprised whenever I try it that it like works. Like even when they don't come together, I end up like somehow I end up like fourth or fifth, and I'm like that shouldn't happen. I had no floating watcher. I just like failed big demons, you know. Like I had my pink guys, but like I didn't end up getting the floating watchers, and so I obviously was nowhere close to first. But I would still get like fourth or fifth, which is pretty damn good for like a failed strat. And whenever you do hit stuff, you get like first or second, probably like
Well,
second.
demons are always good at like fighting off the onslaught, right?
Yeah.
They're good at fighting off the onslaught of stupid tempo
Yes,
cheats
exactly. I
everyone else.
think that's where the demons are shining. Is that before your demons used to be like so big in the mid game that you're like, what are we so big for, right? Now you're
Right.
like so big in the mid
Stuff.
game, and you're like, oh, this is why we're so big for. So we like either don't lose to Eudora or barely use Eudora, and then we gain 12 health that way, effectively, right?
Yeah. So all the health that you used up, well, you didn't really like if you win the matchup against Eudora and you have bigger stuff than you would have had, that's a pure win,
hmm
right? Because um like everyone else probably just loses because they weren't able to scale and get enough stats like big demons can get. So yeah, they're in a good spot. I don't think you should hard. We're not in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
demon meta where
definitely
you can
not.
hard force them,
But yeah,
but
they're definitely something I look out for now. And I did pick Jiraxis one game. I was only offered him once. I was really curious how Jiraxis all of a sudden became good. And I did not get any Pinkmen. I did not get any Floating Watchers. I did not get any Shooty Demon, like whatever stuff. I just started off with a Demon, and then the next turn, I had another Demon offered, and I bought that, and I hit my Hero Power button, and I never
ooh,
stopped
good.
hitting my Hero Power button, and I just had like Demons that I buffed up, and I got third. Like, I don't know if I could have
Yeah,
done better than that or not, but like,
no,
I
that's
had nothing.
Jiraxis.
I had no tech, no anything.
No, that's Jiraxis. He's like budget Tyrion. He's like
Yeah,
Walmart
yeah, it
Tyrion.
really felt
You
like
know?
Tyrion. It felt like a
Yeah, yeah,
dumber version of Tyrion.
yeah. That's basically it. But it's pretty good, right?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I was very surprised. Okay. So that's Battlegrounds. Let's talk a little bit about Arena. I did an Arena stream on Friday night because I said I would, and because we had this huge tier list update that I didn't really tweet about it or write about it because there's another part of it. Like, almost as soon as we published it, I realized something was really off. It's with Meg Theridion. It's always with Meg Theridion. And it's never anything we look at when we're like evaluating the tier list because it's a freaking weird card. But it illuminated a problem that we had and we fixed the bug. So that's going to be coming up, I don't know, like anytime, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. This is Sunday night, Monday morning, and that'll fix that little thing. And then I'll write something up about it and what we did and like all the other stuff. But I wanted to see how the tier list works. And one of the biggest changes that happened, if you just go to the tier list website, Lightforge tier list, you see a lot of things have moved. Actually, not that many things moved that much, but like if you look at things that moved like 6, 5, or 4 points, That's a ton of stuff. And we don't even show the ones that move 3 or less points. So that's even more, right? Because we redid how holding cards and what your expectations on the board are. Not redid, we just made it more complicated. A lot more complicated and more accurate. So it's going to move everything a little bit. But it also highlighted some things that we had been systemically doing wrong for a bit, and we just either like didn't care about, or we just like said, okay, that's fine. Like we knew Hand of Protection was always a bit high. Now it went down about 20 points to like 89, which feels better. Because for a while we were looking at our Divine Shield things, and we're like, I think we're doing Give Divine Shield, right? Give Divine Shield, by the way, it's kind of complicated if you want to think about how to algorithm that. There's a lot of places for possible bugs and stuff. And eventually we're like, oh, this is why it wasn't fully working. Because it's also a 1 mana card. So it's like really sensitive whenever you do something wrong. And you really need to know what situations you can play it. Because it's 1 freaking mana, you can technically almost always play it. So anyway, the long shot of this is that a lot of priest cards went up by a lot. Especially, I'm going to go down from the top. Shadow Madness went up 50 points. I know everyone was like, oh, you guys are underrating Shadow Madness. And we're like, no, I don't like it. It's too iffy. Well, between the fact that they buffed it and, the system is more accurately figuring out holding and how opponents are doing board stuff, it is much more powerful than at least I have been giving it credit for, like quite significantly so. And I know this is a card that we've had this like lowish score on our tier list for like 3 years now. So consider this like finally us coming around on Shadow Madness's power that everybody else knew all along. Shadow Word Pain went up 37 points. I think people are going to kind of disagree with us on this one, but I still really like Shadow Word Pain. I've always really liked Shadow Word Pain. It's a 150 now, by the way. It's not performing quite that well, but it's performing almost that well. So I'm like, that's one of the ones that moved up a lot. I don't know. Cabal Shadow Priest is the same thing as Shadow Madness, but less intense, 22 points because it's a bigger card. It has a body, right? But yeah. So one of the things I wanted to do was to play Priest again, and I did. A lot of other cards of Priest move like 10 points or whatever. And so I played Priest. I drafted according to the tier list as much as I could, and I was not too happy with my deck. I thought it was going to go like around 6 wins, and it went 12. And it's going to be on YouTube. This is what I was talking about earlier. It's going to be on YouTube next week, and that made me like think about things. One, I've always been kind of a less than your average good arena player when it comes to Priest. Like it's one of my weakest classes, and
for good reason as well, just because you keep on insisting on tempo priest.
Yes,
like you keep on insisting on tempo priest. So like remember, first of all, back when I still played arena, but there were metas in which you saw my priest runs, and I just went full scum priest. Right,
it looks so weird.
It looks so weird, and you never bought in, and I did really well in those metas, right? Like with the scum priest, and it would just be like. Sometimes I would have an entire stream, and 90% of the stream would just be one priest run.
Yeah.
Because just me scumming other people. You hated that playstyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this draft kind of forced me into that playstyle. I was kind of going there anyway because the tier list is going there much more often. But more than that, this whole draft was just like, yeah, you're not going to quite have enough 2-drops. You're not going to quite have enough like this and that. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll see how it works, right? And it worked really well. Which brings me to my question. If you look at HS Replay, Priest is the clear second worst class in the meta by HS Replay win rates, which are like 4 win per run player win rates. Second to last. 2, Priest is not that hard to play, at least up to a minimal level, because what's so good about Priest, it's a little harder to get smoked down because you can heal yourself and you just naturally have a lot of big things. And this is a meta where like most of the people you face, warriors aside, are just not going to pressure you at all, right? So this is kind of a really good meta for Priests. They've been micro-adjusted down to the level, like, and I just thought it was a micro-adjust thing, but I had a less than overwhelming like deck. It was pretty like, it didn't even curve out. It didn't have like a lot of like high power cards. It had like, I would say, a normal number of high power cards, and it just made me realize how good and we lucked out a lot in our matchups, but still, this deck was going to go probably like 8-9 wins even without the luck. Um, and it just makes me wonder, like, are people just playing priest wrong, or is there something I'm not realizing about? I don't know about like I guess priests because it seems like you could just kind of hole up and do quite well in this meta just by being big.
This has been true for a lot of metas. So this is like the slowpoke meme where you're finally like understanding
Okay,
this.
but in the other metas, priest was not definitively second to last for like 2 months on the HS replay like things. Like
Sure, but in some of them, like they've been bad. They've been bad because you are correct. People misplay priest a lot because with priest, and especially if if slash when this style is good, like
yeah,
sort of react priest, right?
mm-hmm.
What does that mean? A ton of turn planning, like a lot of turn planning, a lot of risk assessment, a lot of because here's the thing, it's like it's not just about pure card quality. It's like you have the card quality, but like if you make a mistake, because if you're always playing off the board, you have to like balance sort of, okay, sometimes I need to take a risk, sometimes I can afford to maybe tank a hit or two. It's really hard for people to play that way because this is like number one, people are uncomfortable doing this, and number two, I think people play and they just want to get rid of stuff as fast as possible. That's the number one thing I see when other people try to play this style. I'll just put stuff out and they like immediately be like remove,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just run out. So they didn't think about 2 turns ahead at all. They didn't think like, oh well, I could just put down this minion and it's not great, but I don't think there's a huge need for me to like Shadow Word Death that immediately. And then like because all they do is keep on removing, then suddenly they're out of steam, and then the opponent just wins. So yeah, I think for quite a few of the previous metas, like Priest has been sort of good by playing this way, and for people that understand this, but it is really tough. It's not easy to be comfortable in the style and to turn plan that often for potentially just like a half-hour game as well.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. I did make more decisions doing this than I thought I would, and that I remember doing before. But it's still just a lot of like play one of the only things you can, right? Like there's some like, do I hold this removal back? Do I not hold this removal back? But for the most part, you have one play and you make it. Like I don't know. Like it gets a little complicated when you get to the late game and you have like actual choices. But when the first like 8 turns and even 9 turns, you basically don't have choice. Like it's hard to see how even noobs mess that up. So, like, if they draft that deck. Like, I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, if you have kind of internalized Lightforge tier list before this, and this is a major change, the big picture thing is that we have been rating board clears a little higher. And I say that, it's kind of an exaggeration. We've been rating board clears a lot higher than they should be. Like, that's probably the biggest takeaway. So, like, Flamestrike dropped 50 points. Okay, it was a 205. So when it dropped 50 points, it's still a 150. You're still going to take it pretty much all the time. But Arcane Explosion, for example, we had it at 130, which was always, like, a little bit high, even from, like, just experience, but is now, like, a 103. So, board clears. Yeah, it's a huge jump for Arcane Explosion. Like, that makes it from, like, a low premium to, like, below a Yeti, or, like, pretty much a Yeti, right? Which is how you think of it. Like, I don't actually think Arcane Explosion is better than a Yeti. So that's probably in the big picture, the noticeable ones. You'll have to look through the change log. It's like a really long change log, but it'll tell you where things are changing. The ones that have gained a lot of points are like a lot of things that require very specific setups have gained some points because we got more sophisticated at finding these setups. So we talked about a lot of pre-stuff that naturally happens. The Black Knight, this is another long time sour point between us and the community. It's now a Yeti. It's finally gained enough stats to be a Yeti. It's not going to go up more than that. Like, this is what we've looked at the Black Knight for so long, like, and we've done so many things. Like,
by this point, it's like a meme.
Yeah.
The Lightforge Lightforge and Black Knight.
So
Oh
like,
man.
yeah, okay, we were rating it at like a 95 or something, or like a 90, or I don't know what we were rating it at before. I could look. Um, Sorry, we were rating it at a 99, and it's now a 112. Okay, it's a little higher than a Yeti. Okay, so it's a little higher than a Yeti. I will say for me, I would take a Yeti over it. But we do have it rated now a little higher than a Yeti, but still nowhere near a premium, right? So I hope by now you've fallen somewhere between the camps of like us, who we would just kind of not draft the Black Knight unless we were forced to, and people who are like, oh, this is one of those like really good like cards. It's not a really good card still, but maybe we should probably draft it a little more often and like kind of roll with the swings a little more.
I've
Um,
always drafted it a little bit higher than our tier, and like we've had discussions about this,
yeah,
and I've always. So here's the thing: where I personally fall into the camp, because this has been a discussion for like years and years.
yeah.
Like, I've always thought it's been better than our tier list says, but once again, we can't move stuff willy nilly.
Mhm.
This is all stuff that's connected on a string, and I have drafted it higher, but there are some people that believe that the Black Knight is just one of the best cards in the game.
Like they
Period.
no one does
Definitely
that
not me.
anymore. They thought that before the Year of the Dragon happened. After the Year of the Dragon, no one thinks that. I think.
I think there are some. I mean, there are lots of big taunts. So there
Mm.
are quite a few people that really like the Black Knight, and I understand it is quite good. So where would I put it right now? I think I would still put it a little bit higher than where it scores, but not like that much higher. That's where I would put it. Yeah.
112 is around where like a Cult Master, Hippogriff, Defender of Argus, like that kind of level.
Yep.
Um, a little below an evasive Feywing. Like these are stuff that's like a tiny step ahead of like a Yeti, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where that's where we're putting it. Crawlflowers is always sits a Vanguard or a Draconid. I can see it hitting that fairly often, but it also stays in your hand forever. And if it hits a Vanguard or a Draconid, so Draconid is an interesting play, right? Because that's something you can't hit with a spell. But otherwise, an Assassin, then you just pay 1 mana for like a 4 or 5 body, right? Assuming it hits, and you
Right.
can't use it on turn 5, and you have to wait forever, and you have no flexibility. Like, I don't know. I would take an Assassinate over. Would you take an Assassinate or a dark or a Black Knight?
Yeah, I'd probably still take the assassinate.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
Assassin's a 147. Black Knight's a 113 right now, I think. So there's quite a bit of space between the two. But um, that's okay. So that's one of the things. And because this was brought up recently by someone on our YouTube videos, and we did finally get around to this, we did fix Morag Artificer. So this whole thing was brought on, like this whole making, like I didn't want to make the tier list even more complicated. Who knows what they're doing with Arena? This was really a lot of work. This was like 2 months of work between me and the technical director, who we will reveal soon. That's coming up in
Wow.
July.
Oh,
Um,
okay, great.
it's either going to be a really good thing because now everything's like out, and then we can like have a better discussion and we could push ahead with the project, or it could be a terrible thing if they release like a totally different game mode and we're like, I guess Arena's dead. Like here's this is the end of the project. But I don't think it's going to be the end, and that we're going to keep it updated. But we may not develop it more if Arena is not going to be developed. Like we're going to go with where people are interested in, and where, yeah, because it's a lot of work to keep making this better, or we may just like stop making it better, right, and then just keep updating it for the expansions. But one of the reasons we did this is because really this last expansion was the biggest miss overall that we've had on this tier list thing in like years. And when I say the biggest miss, I mean we got like 90% of the cards right. But that's a big miss. We're normally 99%. And in addition to getting around like 10% miss rate, some of the ones we missed were like pretty important cards in the meta, or we made like big statements about them. So we needed to look at fundamental things that were being that the meta was like challenging, and some of that was board state related, and some of that was just things are so powerful and big and swingy now. And when things are swingy, how much you hold for the swings and how much you synergize into the swings just matters more. Um, so that's why we went in that direction. But anyway, we originally put Morag Artificer as the best neutral card in this set at a 151. It is now a 134. So it's still really good. This is still the best 2-drop outside of Henge Clan Hogsteed and Zephyrs. Like, this is not at all saying that this is now no longer a premium card. But it's like definitely not the best card in the set anymore. Rusty Raider is now rated a little bit better, and I think we all kind of can agree that it's a little bit better than Morag Artificer, or at least, I mean, they're 2 points apart. They're basically the same. Frozen Shadow Weaver is now rated a bit better. Guardian Og Merchant is rated a bit better. Like, there are some neutral cards now that are in that zone.
Yeah, and I would say Moarg Artificer is still being severely underpicked based on how often you see it.
It's also like severely misplayed. I can't imagine that many people playing it correctly after the first couple turns.
Yeah. But this is one of those cards in which I think people look at it and they're just not extracting value out of this card correctly. And I think people also just really, really underestimate the additional stat on turn two. Because here's the thing, on turn 2, and I know people are going to laugh at this because you're going to think of examples otherwise, but on turn 2, there's not that much swings in terms of, oh my god, crazy stuff happened. This one stat like just really never matters. More often than not on turn 2, more often than not, it's still a fairly vanilla game, right? And
the game opens up on turn 4.
Yeah. So during that time, when you're still playing a Hearthstone that is pretty recognizable for some people, that extra stat matters a ton. And then later on, right? If your argument is, well, later on this sucks. Yeah, later on every 2-drop kind of sucks. Like, they all suck. And if you have any spells, well, you can play it first, right?
Yeah.
And if you extract value out of it, then what you're doing is daring your opponent to have something to equalize the benefit you've already gained. And also, you have that body out there. So it's just a really freaking good card. And I like, from the amount that I see it being played / I never see it almost, people are just not drafting. People are not using it correctly.
Yep. All right. So that was a little bit of arena talk. I know this podcast has taken a very BG turn in the last couple of weeks, but we're trying to bring arena in here despite Blizzard, and we'll continue to do that as well. So hopefully they do something to BGs to make the meta better. Arena wise, I've given up them doing anything. I also play the single player campaign, by the way. It's not good. It's not. I have not been enjoying it. The story barely holds together. It's really long and drawn out. I don't know. I feel like Blizzard makes some good single player campaigns and stuff, but this one is firmly aimed at the casual mode. And then for the heroic mode, the one that they are making me try to get these packs, I have to build my own deck, which I don't want to have to think about that. And then I try to auto build a deck, and they all suck. Like, auto build decks are not winning you that unless you have all the cards that are necessary for it. When you have to start subbing in cards, the auto build decks at least don't work for me.
Yeah.
And now I have to craft cards just to play this. I don't know. Okay. Also, who knew? Demon Hunters, poets, apparently.
Yeah, they're very into being outcasts. And well, here's the thing. Do they do poetry because they're outcasts, or are they outcasts because they're poets?
I mean, I certainly don't want to hang out with them. after
Right?
doing this
Yeah,
adventure.
I'm not a huge fan of, like, imagine someone who rhymes all the time. Do you want to hang out with them? I don't think so. Probably not.
Okay, so that's it for the substantive in-game talk. Let's move on to question from the goat. Question from the goat brought to you by our patrons. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. We'll give the shout outs next week or the week after when the month is over. But you guys really help support the Lightforge podcast and like everything else. So thank you guys, everyone who's contributed, and I do really appreciate that we've gotten like a new wave of support since the release of the last expansion.
Oh, have we? Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you,
on the
guys.
patron, it ebbs and flows nowadays instead of just like slowly dissipating as it had been doing for like the years before that. We also don't promote it enough. Like honestly, we are terrible. By the way, we are terrible at taking your money. Like honestly, we are like some of the worst people at taking your money who actually do try to take your money. Like there are people who are just like, no, don't donate. Like we're rich, we're fine. Like we are like we're not rich. Well, we'll take your money, but also like we're just really bad at promoting the stuff. But yeah, if you listen to Lightforge, use watch our YouTube, or if you watch Twitch and don't want to be a Twitch sub for some reason, please consider doing a patron donation. Even a little bit, it helps. All right. We're still net positive. I don't think we're at minimum wage anymore, but we're net positive.
Oh my gosh, we're inching our way up there.
Maybe one day we'll get to minimum wage. Our goal right now is to make minimum wage doing this. Like, I'm hoping for a $15 minimum wage, but right now we're below a $7.50 minimum wage or whatever, $7.75. I don't know what the actual federal minimum wage is.
And here's the thing, guys. Like, you don't have to feel sorry for us.
Yeah, we have jobs.
We have day jobs. This isn't like some sort of pity party. It's just like a goal that we have. Right?
It's just a goal. It helps justify to our significant others that we're doing this. Like, rather than just like, hey, why are you playing video games for so long? It's like, no, honey, I swear I'm working on an algorithm. This is real work.
This is real work. But so once again, we appreciate all the support.
Yeah.
If you are wondering at all, where should I spend this money? I have like expenses I need to pay or whatever. Don't give it to us.
No. But you know, if you're doing okay, we'd appreciate some.
Yeah, sure.
We have other jobs that are decent paying and we're good. This is more of a, because there is a line, right, between when something is just like a pure hobby and something that's like, hey, this also is a side hustle that makes, and I think a minimum wage is where that line should be. So this is like slowly edging into the hobby category from the side hustle category, and we'd like to keep it in the side hustle category. So again, thank you guys so much for the patrons, the Twitch subs, everybody. We may do a sub drive at some point again. Also, help spread the word. We're doing a lot of Battlegrounds content now, so if you have friends or just people you know on the internet or in forums or whatever, and you are talking about Battlegrounds now, and you haven't thought to mention the Lightforge podcast, or our stream or our YouTube or whatever, do that, because we have very regular content now for Battlegrounds on YouTube. Merps's YouTube Battleground seems to get more love than mine, probably because he's doing reasonable things, whereas I'm doing unreasonable things and still somehow getting first place now and then. But yeah, it's at least fun, I think. Yeah. So we also, like, if you notice, if you're doing this podcast actually in podcast format, you may have noticed a subtle change in the Lightforge podcast name. And now, instead of saying a Hearthstone Arena podcast, it says a Hearthstone Arena and Battlegrounds podcast. We haven't. It does? Yeah, we changed the description before, but we actually changed the name now. Because the name of the Lightforge podcast is not the Lightforge podcast. It's the Lightforge podcast, a Hearthstone Arena and Battlegrounds podcast. It helps with the search algorithm. Or at least it did when we first made this podcast 5 years ago. I don't know if it does anymore. Maybe they're onto us. But I realized this when I actually tried to search for the podcast for Battlegrounds. I'm like, this isn't even showing up. It's not like, oh, this is low on the list. I'm like, I was trying to figure out what Battlegrounds podcasts there are out there. And I'm like, oh, we're not even showing up at all. The searches just don't even include us. Like, are we doing that poorly that we're not even on the radar? And it's like, no, we just, you need to have the word Battlegrounds in your title, apparently, or it doesn't come up. Okay, so that's like a little behind the scenes update on that. So now, question from the goat is, what has been going on this week? We haven't talked about it yet, but let's talk about it now because apparently the scandals and dramas are happening.
Just so much stuff has happened. Let's first talk about Blizzard related things. So when the Battlegrounds Brawl tournament was going on, Savage dropped a bomb on Twitter that was picked up by Reddit as well, explaining that the reason that Savage was not invited to Battlegrounds Brawl and was blacklisted from Blizzard tournaments in general was because his wife, who used to work at Blizzard, spoke out against unjust practices at Blizzard, and because of that, he was also a liability. And it warped into a huge amount of uproar and outrage from the community for good reason. And eventually, after a while, Blizzard patched things up with Savage, and he tweeted out, he's like, okay, things are fine now. I just want to move on. Blizzard has said that I'm free to attend future events. What was not resolved was the fact that Blizzard came out with a statement that said it was only because Savage did not sign an NDA. And Savage's wife came out and said, that's not true. They are still lying and saying that because of this sort of, NDA reason, he wasn't invited. But in fact, Blizzard told them to their face that it was because that she spoke out against Blizzard.
Like, why, Blizzard? Why continue this sham? Like, at this point, just be like, hey, we reinstated you, This, didn't come from, the highest places, maybe, and just be like, all right, we're sorry this happened, thanks for speaking up. Just let it be. Instead, why? Why put this, NDA thing as an excuse when you're just going to be called out for it again? And also, seriously, props to Savage and his wife for calling Blizzard out again on this NDA crap, and how that's just a flimsy excuse because they just got back in the good graces of Blizzard, or at least the okay graces, and they're not backing down. And we need more people like that because the number of people when you have a significant portion of your career. Remember, even if you lost in this tournament, you got $7,000. That's a lot of money for a day's work. Of playing video games. This is people's livelihoods, and they're putting it in jeopardy every time they say anything, right? Everyone does it. And yeah, they have a good amount of clout to be able to do that, but it's still risky. That's why I also appreciate every time Crypt does something that just totally calls out Blizzard, because Crypt's a big body and he can move this Blizzard's kind of more in need of him than he is of Blizzard. But for a lot of streamers out there, you don't have that luxury. So there's just a lot of silence that happens.
I've spoken to some streamers at TwitchCons and BlizzCons, and they have expressed the fact that they can't say things the way that they want to say them, number one. And for some topics, they just kind of have to bite their tongue. Yeah. And this includes criticisms that I would say the vast majority of people would categorize them as very constructive and probably very helpful for a company.
Because it's Blizzard. That's what Blizzard does. I got a lot of flack for this, immediately after the stream when I called Blizzard a company that works on a fascist model. And people were like, oh, what do you mean? Stop making this kind of wild accusations. Okay, first of all, I don't mean it in the same degree. You know how I make analogies, or you should at this point if you listen to this for a long time. If 1 is to 2, that's the same relationship as 50 is to 100. I know 50 to 100 is much more important and severe, but the logic is the same. 1 to 2, 50 to 100. Anyway, the reason I said fascist instead of like autocratic, right? And the way most businesses, especially game development companies, tend to be fascist is because they need to target at an in-group. You can't make a game that everyone likes, or it's really, really hard. And games are already something very few people like. So a lot of game companies, especially good game companies, because it's very useful to be able to know what your in-group is, so you can very specifically target them. And it's even better if you get all the people in your in-group to work for your company, and then promote goodwill among your in-group, and the in-group feels more like an in-group. That's literally what community is for many people. It's find people who are like-minded to you, especially when this is not a life or death thing, right? We talked about like Black Lives Matter before. Like this is not anything to like that kind of scale, much less to the scale of like Mussolini or Hitler or other things that are like, you know, historically where the word fascism comes from. But if you take out the nationalist part of the definition and change it to in-group, which is really what nationalist means, once you identify the correct in-group, that's how Blizzard operates. That's how most game companies operate. And you can see it functioning. Like, I mean, I don't like that it broke like this, but it's very convenient that the Savige thing breaks right after this, because it's a perfect example to show what an in-group is. In-group, for Blizzard, are people that like Blizzard, that think like Blizzard, that thinks Blizzard makes good games, has fun with stuff, that, you know, if criticizes them in a very, very light and polite way. Not even in a normal way. Like, we've seen people criticize Blizzard in a very normal, like, not inflammatory way, and Blizzard's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You guys remember when I called out Blizzard in I would say like a 7 out of 10 on the scale of inflammatory, because I just kind of speak my mind and I don't care. Like, it's really hard to shut me up. And, like, literally Ben Bro called me out as just like, I don't know what he did. It's like, he's like, watch your tone. He's basically like, watch your tone, boy. Like, who are you talking to? You're talking to Blizzard.
It's kind of like that.
That's basically what he said. You can go back; it's still on Reddit. And I was like, hey, don't look at my tone. Look at my substance. If you have a problem with my tone, that's okay. But our issue is with the substance. You can speak in a nice tone. I can speak in a bad tone. You can speak in a terrible tone. I can speak in a nice tone. As long as the substance is addressed, right? That's what matters. Because I'm not like telling you how to do PR. You're great at doing PR. But that's like, it's an in-group and an out-group. And we've been pretty clear, I think, that we're always in the out group. When it comes to Blizzard, we enjoy things that Blizzard does not fully support. Like, they don't mind that there are people out there. They know a small portion of their player base enjoys things like making algorithms for their products, right? Like, and like going this deep into it in a game mode that's not even like competitive, that they didn't even have a leaderboard in for the first like 3-4 years of its life, right? That they do like very little to support on the competitive side, if like, you know, very little. Like, Twitch had to step in to do stuff. Like, we are very much on the fringe of the out group that is players Blizzard likes and targets, right? Whether to play or to create the community or to do whatever. The fact that we and people like us are anchors in the Arena community, I kid you not, is probably one of the reasons why Arena has not gotten as much attention. Like, not in the beginning. In the beginning, we weren't even, you know, like, that's probably one of the reasons why they continued on the path for so long. We also know some things that Blizzard has said to some peoples about us back in the day. I feel like these days Blizzard probably just doesn't care about us or the Arena at all. But back in the day when they were like...
Here's the thing. So if you guys just tuned in recently, you might be like, wow, why the hell would they care about you? In which case I would say I totally agree right now. But we did used to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we used to average like 1,000 to 2,000 viewers per stream,
right.
And that's when Blizzard kind of cared what we thought and, you know, made inroads to try to work with us, and we just spoke our mind continuously. We were not gonna kind of like, we would help them. And we would continue to do what we would normally do, and we would not break any NDAs, but we would also not like kind of curry favor with Blizzard. We would not like rub shoulders with them. We wouldn't do industry stuff that are just like good for your career no matter what you're doing, right? Like, because it's not our career. It's like, this is our side hustle, right? And, you know, every time I look at potentially making it into a career, I'm like, I don't want to do that. That is not better than my current career. Like, it's a good side hustle. It's also a good hobby. But there are costs to playing video games or being in the video game community into a career. There are a lot of costs, and it makes the game less fun.
Yeah. So I would say that there was a lot of times that and if you've listened to us throughout the years, you know that our relationship is a little bit different than some other people have spoken out against Blizzard, in which case, in those relationships, a lot of it is about sort of like, okay, well, Blizzard does give them a lot of stuff, right? In terms of card
Mm-hmm.
reveals, in terms of invitation and everything. If you've been
Yeah,
following
think
us, you
about
know,
this. We were getting 1 to 2,000 views on our Twitch channel every time we streamed, and we had the number one tier list, but the dominant tier list at the time, and the number one podcast for arena related stuff. And we never got a single. I can tell you this because this is an NDA. We never got a single offer to do a card review, and we would have taken any offers to do a card review.
yeah,
And we may get it in the future. We may not, very well not, but that's how much in the out group we are.
There was also a specific example where Blizzard intentionally screwed me over. I'll save that. I'll save that for another time.
And when we say Blizzard, we don't necessarily mean Team 5, although some of it is Team 5. No. It's also Blizzard as an organization, because a lot of the things, like you talk about Savige's story, a lot of it was not like Team 5 had nothing to do with a lot of it, right? A lot of it is just Blizzard, it's the Blizzard organization, their community people. Like, again, in groups, out groups. And what does a fascist organization do? It doesn't just say oh, we like people in our in group, we dislike people in our out group. That's too simplistic. It also puts people in the in group in power, not just based on a meritocracy. That's not how fascism works. It puts people in power based on how well they fit the in group and how loyal they are with the cause. It's like a kleptocracy, and that's a pretty defining characteristic of how these organizations are run. And Blizzard is super guilty of this. They have all the players in power that were not put in there by Activision, and people trash Activision so much, and the fact that they're producing bad games and whatever. But Activision is running it like a business. Blizzard is running it like a fascist organization. So you have now these two interests, none of which are great for the players, by the way. Actually, I don't know. Running it as a fascist organization is pretty good for the in group, right? If you're in the in group and you play the games Blizzard wants you to play, and you either put a lot of time into it or you put a lot of money into it, you're in the in group. Blizzard's going to work for you. Your interests are kind of set, and you're just being asked to set aside all the other people's interests. You look at a socialist or communist philosophy, right? That's all people. The government serves all people. You look at a Western liberal idea, right? All people have rights. Democracy and capitalism, a little more iffy, right? It's like majority rules, or in the case of capitalism, majority of money rules, or money rules by percentage of how much money you have. But you can still get money in a capitalist system. In the democracy, you can create voting blocks. When it comes to a more fascist model, you can't, right? You're in the in group or you're out of the in group. But anyway, there's no veneer of saying we want everyone to be treated equally, right? And they're a video game company. They want their players to be treated better, and the players who are playing it the right way. So this concept, I'm just trying to pull back the veil a little on the deep-rooted philosophies and the people that they hire and the people that they promote within the organization of Blizzard, and how it gets to this point. This isn't one rogue actor. And if you notice Blizzard's response, Blizzard did not hang the guy out to dry. Why? Because the guy who was doing the stuff to Savige, he is part of the system, and he is a loyal soldier. He is doing his job. He's doing exactly what they hired him to do. It just got out. He messages a little bit wrong. It was a footfall. So they're standing behind him. They created this veneer of oh, it's an NDA thing that I'm so glad Savige's wife immediately called him out for. But because they're still behind their employees in this way. They're not, they're in the in group. They're not in the out group. And Savige, hopefully, on one hand, I want him to continue this outspokenness. On the other hand, he's not going to be able to have a future. No one can have a future with Blizzard unless they're in the in group. So once his wife became in the out group, Blizzard's offering them an olive branch and saying, hey, we know this is bad, but you still fit the characteristics potentially of being in the in group because you were in the in group before. I don't know. Like, do you want to be in the in group? And now they're kind of. It's interesting. It'll be interesting if Savage is ever truly in the in group again with Blizzard.
It is. And it's one of those things in which I think if you looked at Blizzard's reputation, and I think if you looked at the way uh, that people treated us and our criticism of Blizzard, because I'll say this, we've seen Blizzard in the same light for a while, but people are seeing Blizzard in different light now.
Yeah,
When we first
they're like catching up to where we were 3 years ago.
When we first criticized Blizzard, a lot of people, I would say 90% of people's responses to our criticism was hold like you got to be nicer. Like you got to be nicer. And it really was sort of like Blizzard was a great company, and they're obviously working really hard, and they obviously care, and they're obviously smart. And our response was, but they're not. But if you do care, you wouldn't do this to the game mode. And also, what we want to communicate to Blizzard always for every criticism was we wouldn't spend time criticizing, doing all of this stuff, and pitching ideas if we didn't care about the game mode. So at the end of the day, it was just sort of like, I know you care about how we package it. We don't care about how we package it. What we do care about is getting this game mode that we love to a better place. And we don't need the other stuff as well, you know? Like we don't need the whatever that comes with it. We just want a better game mode. So
Blizzard is trying to build a community of an in-group. Yeah. That is their ultimate goal. We view Blizzard as someone who makes a product, and we want a better product to serve the community. And we define community as anyone who is playing the game, including us, like all the peoples. Blizzard defines the community as the people who fit the certain characteristics that they have been targeting the game towards and that they support towards. If we stop playing the game and stop putting money in the game and stop doing all that, and all the people like us, this is not just us, this includes probably the vast majority of you listeners out there, Blizzard would not care that much. They wouldn't care that much because we're not in the in-group. Not the Grinning Goat is not the in-group, but arena players who care about arena at this level are not in the in-group. Like, look at the other arena players. Some people are doing everything by the book to Blizzard, you know? But they're not getting anywhere near the treatment that Battlegrounds players are, even, much less constructed players. Why? Because you can't be in the in-group. Not truly. And that's what happens when the organization is built on an in-group and an out-group. And they are always putting people in positions of power and promoting based on loyalty and how much of an in-group they are. If it's Blizzard overall, it's the people who are more Blizzard-like. If it's, and this is something that most corporations are kind of guilty of, but it's something Blizzard is really proud of. Like, I think if you phrased everything I said in a less technical way and in a more like corporate-y talk way, Blizzard itself would agree with me.
And here's the thing: I want to make I want to make a point that some of you I think understand, but I anticipate a lot of people will be like, wait. So what you're saying is people criticize Blizzard. You guys have criticized Blizzard, and you don't like the fact that they don't like you. It's like, isn't that just common? You shit talk someone and they don't. And how are you expecting them to like it? So here's they don't have to like it. I want to drill. Yeah, here's the point I need to drill home. When we were pitching our message before, our entire point was that we are actually on the same team as Blizzard. If you break it down, Blizzard wants the game mode to succeed. We want the game mode to succeed. We didn't want any sort of personal favors or anything. Mm-hmm. We just wanted the game mode to be better. And I would say the majority of people agreed with a lot of our ideas in which these things should be at least looked upon, or this should be improved. But Blizzard categorically shot it down because of the tone, because we didn't package it well enough. That is problematic. And when a company does that, when it ignores the substance of what you say because of faulty packaging, you didn't wrap it up in a way that they like, then we got a problem here. Because then it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter that at the core of it, they want Arena to succeed and we want Arena to succeed. Because we didn't affix the correct pretty bow on it, it's invalid. And that can't be. Like,
and that's the most important thing for
like
Blizzard. That's the most important thing for Blizzard. That's what you walk the walk, right? And that's what they promote on, and that's the people they put in power, and they're proud of it. That's how that corporation exists. So this is a Blizzard thing, and we're talking about it from personal experience, but we've heard the same thing repeatedly through like so many people, not just like streamers or like players, but people who work with Blizzard, people who worked for Blizzard, people who worked, like just it's just what Blizzard does, right? And like I said, I really don't think Blizzard would disagree with much of what we're saying if you just packaged it a different way. Like this conversation right here, I don't think they disagree. I think they would say this is our corporate model. Like this is how we make great games. And I don't know. I don't know how much to say to that besides that if you're in the out group in a fascist system, it's going to be bad for you. And we're in the out group. And you're probably in the out group too. And so if you're wondering why things are bad for us, that's why. And the thing with fascism is you can't change it. That's the point of it, That's why it's there. And there are benefits to that, just not for the out group.
Yep.
Okay. So that's one thing that happened, the whole thing with Savage. But something else also happened.
Well,
it's been a busy week.
It's been an exhausting week. And by something else, I would say an entire movement. Today, when I was planning for this podcast, I thought back of what happened this week, and I totally thought that the Battlegrounds brawl happened weeks ago, literally weeks ago, because it has been so exhausting. And if you guys have been tuned into social media, especially Twitter, you know that this week has been a very pivotal week for the hashtag MeToo movement, in which many, many individuals in the gaming community have shared their stories of sexual abuse and sexual assault. And it has created a catalytic effect in which a lot of brave individuals have come out, which I think has made other individuals reflect on their experiences and embolden them to come forward as well. And what we saw was just extraordinarily sad. And I will say that it has put me in a dark place mentally, just by reading through everyone's stories. And of course, me being uncomfortable here is nothing compared to what these individuals actually had to go through. And I wanted to bring this up, number one, just because I think it would just be a disservice to not bring it up and not sort of support this movement. And one specific area I want to really address is how important it is that we create a supportive, encouraging environment for people to not only come forward now, but in the future. And specifically, I want to address the most common response.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, what
roughly
happened?
What happened in broad strokes? Because I don't think you've covered what the talk has been about.
No. I mean, in broad strokes, it's just people coming out against people who have committed sexual assault against them, and this is people within the gaming industry. We're talking about fellow content creators. We're talking about people within organizations, very high up within organizations as well. And this isn't just women. Men have come out with their stories. And in terms of severity, we have the whole entire broad spectrum. So, like, that's about as specific as specific
Okay.
as I can say, just because it is a deluge of stories, and but the common factor is there is just a lot of toxicity and a lot of this stuff happening, and right now it is all pouring out because we meme a lot, we just play a lot of these games, and games are about escapism, right? It's a lot of it is about escapism, and this is a very it's a punch in the gut of what we believe is a pretty fun environment, but really all of this stuff is happening. So, um, something that I wanted to address specifically is a common reply that I've seen is innocent until proven guilty, which we know this. Look, I mean, people watch CSI and Law and Order. It's a common phrase that people throw around. And I think that, if you just toss this out on the street, people kind of know what you mean. And I think generally everyone will agree. It's like, oh, should a person be innocent until proven guilty? Yeah, sure, of course. Um, and unfortunately, in this case, by throwing around this phrase, it is extraordinarily damaging. And let's dig into this phrase for 1 second. Innocent until proven guilty is uh,
True.
from our. I mean, it is. It is from
That's
our
the
criminal.
law.
Yeah, it's the law. It's from the criminal justice system, right?
Hmm.
And for the criminal justice system, what does that really mean? It means that we have set an incredibly high bar, and said that, okay, you need a lot in order to basically make someone pay a ton of money or lock them up and separate them from society for a long period of time, right? We've established that bar. So, what does that really mean? That means that if we just say we set the bar as innocent until proven guilty for even these stories that have come out, it means that it is an uphill battle where a lot of the people that have come out with their stories will never ever be able to obtain any sort of justice, closure, or any sort of help for their situation. Because most of these incidents, I think, if you read them, a lot of people will say, wow, something really inappropriate happened here, at the very least. But can the criminal justice system currently that we have do anything about it? No. And this is taking into account if it works properly, and if the accuser is able to go forward and run the gauntlet of things that make it extremely difficult for that individual to reach kind of like the court system. Um, and what happens is that if we do not create a supportive, encouraging environment for people, and we just sort of dismiss this with the very broad stroke reply of innocent until proven guilty, then a lot of these things that are extraordinarily inappropriate, a lot of the incidents that happen will still continue to occur, and there will be really no consequences. Really, nothing will ever change because our criminal justice system right now is not properly equipped, and this standard that we've created was never meant
Hmm.
to address this kind of stuff. And I want to talk about this because it does really sadden me when I see a lot of people throw out this term quite often.
Yeah.
Someone comes out with their story and then a flippant response of innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, so there's two things that you brought up. One is the practical system of like, is our justice system functioning the way it should, and are people able to collect evidence, and all that stuff, and how much like I dig into the weeds on practical matters, which is not all that much. So I want to focus on the innocent until proven guilty part. Like, what
Yeah.
is innocent until proven guilty? You said that that's a very like high bar we set before we like lock people up or have them pay stuff. But the law generally, what is the law? What is the law we're governed by? That is the lowest common denominator of what it means to be allowed to be in this society. Like, past that, we lock you up. That should not be your moral code. To not do things that you can be definitively proven guilty about, or to just like be okay with people doing things that they can't be proven guilty about, right? Like, that should be no one's moral code. That's just the base bottomest line that everybody in the society can sort of agree on and say, okay, well, at that point, we kind of have to lock you up. Like, in the way a Western liberal government is generally constructed, no one wants to lock you up, but we kind of have to, theoretically. Practically speaking, I don't know. Maybe they want to lock some people up, but like, so the phrase "innocent until proven guilty," when applied to anything besides "should we lock this person up," like should the government like send the popo and lock them up, it, it's it's not applicable. It's not even like, oh, that's like not a good thing to say or whatever. It's just it's in a like you're comparing apples and oranges. So someone has a story, and you know, I have sympathy for the like when people are like believe women. I'm like, okay, sure. I think it should be more like don't not believe women. Like listen to people, judge people, but unless it's about the court system, it's not innocent until proven guilty. It's not.
Yeah.
You don't have a presumption of innocence. That's not how. I mean, you know, maybe that's how your moral code operates, but I feel like there are plenty of, if not the majority of moral codes, where you don't need all that evidence to be judged guilty of 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 a moral failing.
And here's the thing, something that I see a lot of, and this is a common sort of reply in which people are saying, "Oh, but what about the like what about the examples in which, okay, if we create an environment that's too supportive, too encouraging, well, there can be false accusations."
Yeah.
It's the same. And here's the thing. Are you technically correct? Yes, that could happen. Just like for when we spoke about Black Lives Matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you say, should we encourage protesters? Yes. Does that bring along some looting and rioting? Yes, you can't stop that. Does that mean that because of that, we should say, okay, well, you got to be real, like, okay, so because of that, protesting, let's really limit that a lot, right? Like, we really don't want the rioters. No, no, no. There are ways in which you can take steps to limit these bad scenarios that you
Mm-hmm.
don't want. But what we have to do is we have to encourage the things that make our society a better place. And by you necessarily tying these two things together, in which I will concede that yes, if by making a more supportive and encouraging environment for people to come forward, does it make it easier for false accusations? Technically, yes, right? It does. Now, is that something that we should be willing to accept given the current
Yeah.
state? Yes, we have to.
Like,
And if your worry is that, well, there are some of these times in which, well, no, then you just don't get it. Then it's the same thing when we spoke on the Black Lives Matter topic. It's the same thing as the people who are saying, I'm okay with protesting, but only between these hours, and
mm-hmm.
please don't do any of that. And then because we don't want anything to really be jostled, right? It's the same exact concept. And if your focus is on the very few examples in which this can be used improperly, whether it's looting slash rioting with protests, or it's the false accusations here with people coming forward, then you're just
You're
I
missing
can't
the
explain it any
forest
better.
for the random trees that are, you know, burned down or whatever.
Yeah.
Like okay. So you have to look at where we are right now and where we want things to move. So if you think right now there are way too many people falsely accusing other people of sexually harassment when things like just really didn't happen, or happen in a very different way, versus people who are harassed, can't prove it, and you know live with what happened and people don't believe them. Like, where do you think we are right now, right? Like, if you think we're really far or like even significantly far and the people are just making random accusations, okay, then maybe you don't want to go farther. But I think it's hard to look at the objective facts of the world and talk to all the people, women, men, people who are accused of. I mean, I have very close friends who have been accused of sexual misconduct that they either did not do or have, where all the facts were agreed upon, and it's just a question of whether you call that sexual misconduct or not, right? Like, these are my close friends. I know what it's like to, not personally, but I know what it's like to be on the other side through, 1 degree of separation. I also know way more women, usually. I don't know any men, but this obviously also happens to men, who have no real way of proving anything or don't want the more negative things that will happen if they try to find a systemic, like a way into the system to address their grievances. And a lot of times they just want to be believed, because it actually happened to them. And I don't think, at least from what I see in the world, I think we're far, far into the other side of people who are victims not being believed or taken seriously, rather than people being falsely accused. But like, it is true. There are, and there's always going to be. There are always going to be a, like you say, very, very few. I would say significant, very few,
Yeah.
but also significant number of people who are falsely accused, or instances that are gone too far. Even look at the Black Lives Matter movement, which I'm fully in support of, but like, go a little step further from Black Lives Matter. They're pulling down statues of Confederate soldiers. The people who committed treason, the only thing they did was commit treason against the United States, that the United States is just honoring all across the country, right? It's pretty silly. Vast majority of the people want the statues to be like taken down or moved to museums, or like, at the very least, heavily, what do you call it, like plaqued with like that story, right, of what they actually did, rather than just honoring them. But the movements happened recently where all the statues are kind of like ending up beheaded, they're ending up in lakes and rivers, they're graffitied on, and quite a number of these statues are people who fought for civil rights. They are people who have done a lot of great things that have nothing to do with the fact that they were also slaveholders, for example. And there's a question of where to draw the line and what goes too far. I remember when they first started, this was like years ago, when they first started taking some of the statues down, or there was a movement to take some statues down, and people were like, where do you draw the line? What if we start removing George Washington? And people were like, oh, that's never going to happen. Well, now they're calling for the removal of a Union general who led a black platoon that the freed slaves paid for, to have a statue of him erected in DC. But the statue is literally of a white man on a horse leading a bunch of black people. So it looks bad. But, like, is it too far? Is it not too far? I don't know. But there's always going to be these cases. There are cases online of, like, people getting fired for, like, doing, like, very innocuous things that seem to offend people who are very woke. And the companies, to avoid bad publicity, would just fire them. And it's almost all at-will employment here in the US. So you could just get fired. You can't do anything about it. And their careers are ruined. But I would not say they're not significant. They are significant, and there's a significant number of them, but they are still far fewer than the other side of the coin. And so here's the thing. Like, how far do you want to go as a society? We still got to move closer to the midpoint. And that's what innocent until proven guilty is the opposite of, right? Innocent until proven guilty is the standard to lock someone up. So it's far on the other side. That's not the standard for how to run a society. That's the standard of how to lock people up.
No. So in any given problem, if one of your replies to the problem is, where do we draw the line? No. Stop. What you're doing is basically saying, this is a really hard problem, and I don't want to really think about the solution. It stops somewhere. And because specific examples require sort of, a delicate touch, it is, it's not possible for anyone to say, all right, here is exactly where we draw the line and everything. But what we have to acknowledge is that right now, because like Adulta says, it's like a balance, right? So there is an environment in which right now it is too hard for people to come forward with their stories. Yeah. It is too hard for them to bring action, like any sort of action, just in order to be believed. right?
Hmm.
Not even saying that they to get like criminal justice, just to be believed.
Yeah,
It is
I want to
extraordinary.
set the criminal justice part even to the side. Like that's the whole thing with
Sure.
innocent
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
until proven
yeah.
guilty. Like right now, the people on Twitter aren't like lock him up or lock her up. They're like,
No,
hey, I just want people to know that this actually happened. It's been weighing
that's it.
on me. It's been torturing me. Like,
So when you have this sort of environment right now, if your fear is that, oh man, we're gonna move forward so much such that like anyone can just throw an accusation. Okay, number one, we're really far away from
yeah,
that right now.
yeah,
And number two, it's gonna take so much in order for us to even get to the point in which we see some sort of good equilibrium. And I'm not saying we're gonna get there and stay there, because obviously that's never going to happen. But if your fear immediately, when it comes to any sort of issue like this, whether it's the Black Lives Matter or if it's for this hashtag Me Too movement, is that, oh, I'm afraid of what's going to happen. And for your statue kind of example as well,
mm,
um, one of the responses is like, okay, well, they're just going to tear down everything. Like, no, and we have pretty far ways to go from that. I
yeah,
think there are some statues that are really inappropriate that we can start off with, and we can
hmm
just sort of see where it goes. But this is one of those common sort of things that I see, responses that I see to try to stop progress in many of these things. And for here, it is especially disheartening because a lot of times all these people want to do is just be believed and warn other people
yeah,
about this.
yeah.
That's it.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yep. So I'm glad we're at a place because like honestly, like super serious. 10 years ago, I was pretty sure I'd be dead before people would talk openly about this kind of stuff and gain the degree of acceptance that it has. Like, I literally thought I would not see the day when a conversation was being had in a serious way about any of this stuff. Whether it's
Well, you
like,
also only drank Coke and ate Chipotle.
yeah, wait, that hasn't changed.
Well, I think that also has a view on how long you would live. But anyways, please go. Please go.
I'm personally very surprised and happy that the world and my personal communities in the U.S. As well have been have gone to this point where we could talk about things like this. Like there's part of the reason why we haven't never talked about this before was is because we're about a children's card game and we just spent half an hour talking about things that don't like they happen in the world of children's card games, right? Which is because they happen everywhere. Not because children's card games are especially bad. It's just something that happens everywhere. And if children's card games are especially bad, it still happens everywhere else. But we're talking about it now because it's gotten to the point where it's hard to ignore. Like I
Yeah.
fully admit that we were, or like at least I was, not part of the solution. I was sympathetic to people who were part of the solution, but I was not part of the solution, which makes me part of the problem, right? Because I wasn't personally affected by it and I was not fighting for a solution. And I'm glad that we're at the point right now where not just us, plenty of other people, like just no longer feel comfortable not being at least somewhat a part of the solution. And I mean, if you guys follow me for 6 years, I do the opposite of virtue signaling. I try my best to signal faults. And then the people who still watch me and care about what I have to say, I'm like, all right, so you know what's going on then, right? Like you're still here. Like that's my strategy. But it's gotten to a point where even though like it probably would have been easier for me to talk about this on a tangentially related platform if it were something that would not be virtue signaling. If it was fault signaling, I'd be much more likely to talk about it. But it's gotten to the point, and I'm so happy that the world has gotten to the point where we even like we choose to talk about it, but we also are not trailblazing in any way to talk about this, right? We're
Yeah.
just throwing our weight behind the movement for whatever that may mean, and no longer being silent.
This is something in which I think if we, with all the things that are happening now, and just like with our discussion of the Black Lives Matter and the protests, in which it's not that staying silent is the equilibrium.
Yeah.
Here, if we stay silent, we are at fault.
Yeah.
It is like that, and that's the thing. It's like staying silent. You own. This is like what we talked about before as well. You own the problem,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't matter once again if you are the perpetrator or if you have done these things. We all need to come together, and for the Black Lives Matter, a lot of that was about the country, America and Americana. For here, you can look at it in any game, in any sort of grouping that you want. If it's just being a human being, right? Like being a good human being and being a society, or you can look at it as women in the gaming industry, in which, let's face it,
Yeah.
really freaking sucks. And the environment is extraordinarily toxic. So, however you want to lump this issue, it is something that we have to own and we need to talk about, and we need to identify what is the problem, number one. How can we better move towards a solution, number two? And number three, don't think about like sort of don't think about, oh, here are the things that can go wrong working towards a solution, because whenever you have anything as unwieldy as sexual assault, like it's a problem that is obviously age old, but it's a problem that needs to be addressed, right? You're not going to have perfect solutions, but we need to move towards creating an environment that is better suited for dealing with this stuff. So
Mhm.
let's just try to move there. And throughout this movement, there might be some bumps in the road. We might do some things really wrong, but we have to move.
Yeah.
Because right now, by staying here, we are doing an extraordinary disservice to everyone in the gaming industry, and everyone
Mhm.
just being a human being. It is unacceptable. Yeah.
Yep. All right. And on that note, we will end this podcast, and we'll see you next week. Until then, this is Adwicta.
This is Merps. See you guys.